Hello, hello, my friends. Welcome to another Wednesday Whine. I fancy it up, got myself a real microphone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear with no interference. Because, if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. So I want you guys to listen clearly to my mellifluous voice. No one has ever described my voice as mellifluous or sweet. It's more like Grover with an accent. But anyway, I'm Anna Belaval. I'm broadcasting live from Chicago, Illinois on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, welcome. Let me know where you're connecting from. And it's our Wednesday Whine. It's our halfway there meeting, a little happy hour, cocktail hour, so we can whine about the week. We can inspire each other, know that we're in this together. And you know that I started this whole thing during the pandemic because Wednesdays are really difficult for me and I needed a little respite and something to look forward to. And so here we are, a community that gets together on Wednesdays and gets to tell each other what's going on and learn a little something from the outstanding guests that have said yes to me over and over. And I'm so happy for that. Hello, Lachelle and Kathy and Deborah and Patty and the other Kathy and Jasmine. It's so nice to see you guys. To all my women out there, happy International Women's Month. I didn't know that was a thing until a couple years ago. It is a thing everywhere else but in the United States, and so I'm so glad that we've made it a thing and that we can celebrate each other and elevate each other. And my guest did just that with her new memoir and her first memoir. My cousin, who I've had on Wednesday Whine before, Sophia Boltz, is the Novel Floridia on Instagram. And I was looking for something to read. And if you're looking for somebody to give you recommendations, Sophia is great. And I'm her old cousin and godmother. And I was like, what should I read? I don't know what to read next. I had just read really dark books. And I wanted something good. Didn't have to be a comedy. And she said, try this memoir. I love it. It's called The Beauty in Breaking. And the memoir was written by a doctor. And I was like, what? A doctor wrote a memoir from an ER? Ooh, guts and grime. I'm ready. I didn't know that this book was going to be a revelation. Because when you look at your future and you're about to finish a long journey like med school and residency and specialty, and you're like, here I go. I'm married to my college sweetheart. We're going to move to his town so we can be close to his family. And Dr. Harper can correct me if I'm saying all this wrong because I read the book. I finished it a month ago. And you have everything planned and your spouse says, I'm not moving with you. In fact, we're going to break up. And the rug is pulled from under her. She goes to her graduation almost in tears, picks up her things, licks her wounds, and goes to start a job at an ER in Philadelphia, where she doesn't know anybody and where she's going through the breakup of her marriage. And I don't know how she did it, but there is a quote she has in her book where she talks about how uncertainty gave her the chance to new opportunity. And I shivered because I am scared of failure and uncertainty. So I really wanted to talk to Dr. Harper, and I want to bring her in so that you can meet this lovely woman how are you, Dr. Harper?
Oh, lovely. So lovely to be here with you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to join you.
I am so happy that you actually made the universe work for me for the first time in 46 years.
It all comes together.
Because I read your memoir, and when I finished, I had so many questions. And I said, I want to talk to Dr. Harper. And I wrote it on Instagram. And I said, I want to have her on Wednesday Whine because I want to find out why she wanted to tell her story. For a lot of people of color like you and I, we don't think our voice is going to resonate. Our story is going to be worth it because we've been told so many times that it's not, or that people are going to relate. So you are an ER doctor, but you write beautifully. Should I have said and instead of but? I didn't think that doctors could write this beautifully.
Thank you. I know that's a correction I make with myself all the time. Whenever I want to say but, I'll say and. All right, but and. So I hear you, and I hear you about the courage to tell our stories and also to recognize our voice, the validity and the power of our voices. Now, interestingly, when I started writing this memoir, I didn't know what would happen. I knew that there were stories that were staying with me. I knew that I wanted to talk about the challenges I faced growing up in an abusive household and how that led me to want to be a healer, to be a support system, like find my own healing, and then also be a support system for others on their own journeys. And then that I was interconnected between different patient stories of healing and transformation. Because for me, what's so important is our interconnectedness. I mean, I know we all want to think we're, special snowflakes, but we're not in many ways. We're just not. At our
Sorry, but you're not.
Exactly. Sorry. You're fantastic.
This is the ER doctor in you. Come on, let's go. I don't have time for all this whining. Come on.
Exactly. It's true. And so, but in that is something wonderful that like we can recognize the humanity in each other and our common struggles and the opportunity to by the way, I was saying rebuild better before Biden was on the scene. It's a very good phrase, but I was saying it before. So the opportunity to rebuild better. And so that's why I did it. So when I was writing it, I didn't really think about, oh, well, what will happen when I get published and it won't resonate with people and no one will want it. I didn't even go there. And it didn't dawn upon me till I got to the point where I was looking for an agent and a book deal. And then I thought, oh, wait a second. What's going to happen?
Oh, is it going to happen? Oh, okay.
Right. Exactly. And that's when I thought, and then when I got the book deal, then it dawned upon me, oh, people are going to want to talk to me about my childhood and divorce. And they're going to, right. I was like, well, I guess I'm ready, or I will be by the time I have to do it.
Did you talk to your parents and your siblings about it?
I have, I'm the kind of person where I say that as long as I'm operating from a place of integrity, it truly doesn't matter to me what other people think. It just doesn't, because everybody has their own story and they have their own process, and they may or may not, they have their different levels of where they're at and their personal healing. So as I was writing, and usually it was, I don't like it, at midnight, my editors will tell you, like they typically get emails from me at like 3 a.m. So as I'm writing at like 10 at night with like vanilla candles or incense going, it was just a meditation for me. I mean, I was just being really honest, and it was important for me to tell my story and still respecting some boundaries, so I didn't go too much into someone else's experience. And I really thought about, well, I'm fine with being honest. This is not a time for retribution. I mean, I'm not a vengeful person to begin with. So I did think about that, like not portraying exes, for example, in a negative light, but just being honest. And if it doesn't sound great, that's the way it is. I'm fine with that. So when it came time to discussing, and before the book was coming out, that's when I spoke to my family about it. And I offered like my mother, people like I'm close to, like, my mother, brother, etc. My aunt who's not in the book. She's a little annoyed she's not in the book. I was like,
oh, you had to break it to her. You're not in the book.
And I said, I was like, Eileen, maybe read the book and then you decide if you wanted to be in that book or not. So she wants to be in the next one. It's fine. So that's when I spoke to them, because part of my process also is that this is supposed to be an honest and truthful account. It's not a group project. I don't want everybody's input. So you can read it ahead of time, but not while I'm doing this work. So that's when they found out. Yeah.
When I was writing my one-woman show, everyone wanted input.
Yes.
Everyone. And I wasn't asking for it, and I wasn't explaining what it was about. And my cousin would send me ideas that he thought would be funny about his own life.
Exactly.
Okay.
I know. It's really true. And so that's what happened once they got it. And I was like, well, thankfully, the book is already being printed and distributed. Yeah. So cannot go in the book.
You cannot. It's been sent to the publisher. We're done. It's printing.
Right.
So you why did you want to be an emergency room doctor?
And in many ways, I feel that I was groomed for it. Growing up in this abusive household with a father who was a batterer, and all I had was a snapshot in time, and I had to make a decision just from being very young, from being a child. Is there likely to be imminent danger right now? Do we have to make an intervention? Or is it likely to blow over and it's nothing? I mean, that was the spectrum of decision making. Mm-hmm. And so I feel that those are the exact skills I need as an emergency room doctor. And I knew what it was like to feel traumatized. I knew what it was like to be hurting. And there was always a part of me, even as I got old, well, I say older, like in high school, when I was thinking, well, maybe lawyer or architect, because, those were the career fields we were supposed to pick from. But I always came back to emergency medicine because I wanted to be there with people during what they felt was a critical time of need. Like physically, yes, but then also emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. So I'm sure that's why it happened, because of the way I grew up and how I interacted with my experiences.
So when you become a full-fledged doctor and you go to your first ER full job, your marriage is broken, you've moved to a city you don't know, you're broken, you're trying to heal. I would have thought, I gotta suck it up and compartmentalize. I cannot, I can't go out there raw. But as I read your book, I realized you had no choice. It was in you. You were walking into that ER, and the experience you had where your patients helped you heal in some ways with their stories and their cases, was that what you thought would happen? Or while you were going to work, you were going, all right, Michele, doctor face, doctor, demeanor.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you didn't go in crying, oh my God, my husband dumped me. Oh, how's your ulcer? Shut up, I'm doing worse than you.
Right, no, there was none of that. It was game face all the time, all the time. And that's what, for the most part, that's what we do in medicine, and especially in fields like emergency medicine, the surgical subspecialties. It's we go there, we do our job, and strict boundaries, which is why it's a little strange writing the book, because we don't discuss our personal, for the most part, we don't discuss our personal lives there. And it's all about the patients, the workflow, whatever group dynamic we have going on in the department. So much so, it was interesting because I remember when I was in my first position, even like a year in, some people found out that I had moved there alone and didn't know anyone, and was going through a divorce. My divorce was just finalized. They had no idea. And I remember people coming up to me saying, I had no idea these were your circumstances and that's what was going on. So I really kept it compartmentalized. And then as I was having interactions with patients, I mean, it was at home later where I would process. I talk about the infant who was brought in newborn. We got the call, an infant had stopped breathing, was essentially dead, and they were trying to resuscitate the infant. And you just know in this field, like, when they bring in a human, if they're alive or not, you get that sense. And the baby was gone. And we worked on this infant far longer than was reasonable, because that's what you do when it's a child. Like, we need to know we've done everything humanly possible. We need to know that for ourselves. We need to know that when we go out and speak to the family and bring them into bedside, we need to know in our hearts that nothing else possibly could have been done. And so after that, and when I spoke to the family, and of course they fall apart, we just hold a space for them. That's what we did in the moment. And it's when I got home that it hit me. I had not lost a child, but I know what it's like to lose hopes, dreams, the story that you have for yourself, the future you imagine for yourself. And that was one of the first times in this new city, at this new job, starting over alone, that I began to process what had just happened on a deeper level, because what I went through with that family.
That's when you realize how
Mhm.
ephemeral life is, and that you have to hold on to every moment, get every lesson, because one
Right.
day it changes. And you say you miss the opportunity of the why. Like you're left with no explanation,
Right.
which is kind of like what happened with the divorce too. You were like, but wait, what happened here?
Yeah. I mean, well, that one, he kind of gave a reason, but that one he gave,
But it wasn't like you were having problems and it was
right,
exacerbating your marriage, and it was like,
right. It wasn't that. I mean, he had said that I was on my path, and he felt like I was going to achieve my goals, but he didn't feel he was on his. So he just felt he couldn't stay with me because I was on my path and he wasn't on his, and so
no.
he would just be thinking about that. But still, it's one of those situations, any kind of loss, where we may feel blindsided, and it may even be tragic. I mean, the most extreme example of like losing someone you love, and there's no answer, but still somehow we have to find a way forward. I mean, what's the alternative? We have to find a way forward. And God willing, we can find that strength. Not immediately. I do feel it's important not to just gloss over the grief, but to feel it and allow that process to happen. And then ideally, as we heal, we can be there for others, because that is one of the certainties in life, that there will be challenges, and there will be these breaking points, and there will be times that we have to start over. And I also do feel there's a lot of opportunity in that. Looking back on it, um, it's all those experiences are what got me here today. So I have a lot of gratitude.
Right. As hard as it was,
Yeah.
living in the household you lived, having your marriage break, it made you who you were.
Right. And I always say I never romanticize trauma, because I would never
Right.
wish that on
No.
anyone. But it's true what they say. It's in many ways, it's not what happens, but how we handle it. And there is the opportunity to come through it. So for everything in my life, sometimes people ask me, would you do something differently? If you could go back in time? I Thankfully, nothing comes to mind where I would change it.
Wow,
For
that's
my life,
wonderful.
for my life. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of, if I
Yeah.
thought about other people's lives, maybe, but for my life, and I'm deeply grateful for much in my life, and I wouldn't change anything.
That's one, but that's a great feeling to have. And you are can I ask how old you are?
You can.
30s. You're in your 30s.
No,
You're in your
I'm
30s.
not.
Well,
No, I'm
since
not. No,
how
I'm not.
what are you
Really?
older?
Yes, I am.
No.
Yes.
You're in your 30s, okay? So at a very young age, you have found out this is not a newscast. I can take a poetic license with this. So did writing this book, was it like journaling for you? And did you ever journal before?
I did, but I formally would journal in my youth, and
Uh-huh.
I would keep a diary um,
Uh-huh.
over that time. But then after that, I would informally do so. So when I got to writing, and this writing process was a while. I'd have to go back in my notes to say exactly how long, but before I got the contract, it was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years, and then I got the contract, and then I edited for another year while I was under contract. So this was not a quick book. Yeah, and when I first started, it was very casual, because I did not know it would end up. I mean, I wanted to write a book, but I was busy, and I was getting my footing. And I didn't know what it would look like to have a book deal. So I didn't have myself on a rigorous schedule until I had the contract. So it took a while. And it was, when I say it was a meditation, that's really what it was. It was my own personal project initially.
So it's obvious that you carry the badge of honor of representing African American women in a workplace where there are very few of you,
Yeah.
right? And being in a hospital system where I love what you say, where you go with the flow, you kind of normalize, you forget sometimes about the situation of the patient, and you just go. And I'm referring to the experience you had with the patient who the police brought
Right.
to, because they wanted you to remove, they thought he had ingested drugs to hide them, and they wanted you to, in layman's term, pump him, right? And
Right.
there was nothing wrong with him. You didn't find evidence. This wasn't him making him sick, and you knew that his right was to say no.
Right.
I don't want to get it done. And you treated that person as a human being, and respected his rights, where the entire
I know.
department was like, no, Dr. Harper, this is standard operating procedure. The cops are telling you to do this. You chose in that moment to follow your heart and to follow your priorities. I'm for lack of a better word, because I'm thinking of the word in Spanish and now I can't think of it in
Yeah.
English. But I know you made the conscious choice to honor and respect his rights, whereas other physicians, even maybe a black physician, would have been like, dude, this is what we do. Let's just end it.
Right. And everything you said is correct. What I also did was follow the law,
Yes.
because forcing an exam on someone is assault, and it is illegal and unprofessional, immoral. Because essentially it was the police coming in with an allegation, the patient saying it's not true, and the patient being of sound mind. So the law is, it doesn't matter who brings in a patient. If it's a competent adult, and even some cases with children, but we'll stay out of the weeds. If it's a competent adult, it doesn't matter. Police, family members, the patient has rights. They make their own decision, and violating their rights is illegal. So that was a case where the other staff said, no, we do this anyway. And my resident, so I'm the attending, I'm the doctor in charge. She's training under me. She called what she felt would be a higher authority. She called hospital ethics and legal to see if she could override my order to discharge the patient. So then hospital legal, yeah, exactly. That that is my face. Exactly. So they call back and say, no, Dr. Harper is correct. There's no overriding her order. And she's like,
And why
okay.
are you calling us? And why are you calling us, little girl?
Exactly. That's what they should have done, but I don't even think that's what they did. That's what they should have done.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting that I always think of the ER as chaotic, and I always think about like a revolving door, especially the night shifts, right? Especially a Friday at midnight. In every story you always had a moment of pause where you wanted to listen to this person, to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, so that if they left out the door or if they went upstairs, you had done everything you could. Is that you, or is that the training?
I think that's me. No, I will say, I see thousands and thousands of patients. So I did have the benefit of choosing cases that were most salient to me.
Yeah.
And also where I had a little more time and space, because there are times when we cannot have that full conversation with a patient and I can't learn all about their history. I mean, that happens commonly. But my inclination to do that, my wanting that to be the approach, that is me. And that is certainly not, medical training's starting to change to be more humanistic. And I think that has improved with it becoming a more diverse field. More women, more people of color, more people who aren't, from rich backgrounds, different levels of physical ability, disability, LGBTQT. I mean, that's what we need if we're going to be an effective field. So it's changing, but it's not yet standard. I mean, that's for sure.
I heard you today. I was listening, preparing for this. I was listening to your interview with on NPR with David Bianculli, I think it was, and he was asking you about. Hold on, because he was asking you. Let me think. I lost my train of thought because I don't know if it was David Bianculli. It's the Terry Gross show. I'm trying to figure out. And you were both in Pennsylvania. And I remember the part that shocked me the most is that, and it didn't shock me because I know this happens, that you went for a job because you've always wanted to be part. It still incenses you. It's still, and yeah. You went for the job. There was an administrative job that you were super qualified for. And what happened?
So, here I am. I love my clinical work. I mean, I love the patient part. The bureaucracy sucks, but seeing patients I love. But I want to do more. I feel like there's a way for me to increase the impact of the work I'm doing. So this administrative position opens up in the hospital. I'd continue clinically, but I'd also have this big hospital role to affect operations on that level. So I interviewed. I felt I did really well in the series of interviews, and I was just waiting for my boss to call me into the office and tell me how I got the position. So he did call me into the office one day. But what he said instead was, yes, you're super qualified, you did great, and in fact, you were the only one to apply for the job. But they have decided just to leave it open, And Michele, I hope you stay on with us, because the issue is in this hospital, they do not promote women. They don't promote people of color. They just don't. And so that's why they always leave. But I hope you'll stay anyway. So I did write my letter of resignation. I did end up leaving. And then I was told more, because I'm still in the community, still live here. And so what I was told by people who were still there was that soon after, the hospital felt, okay, it's the perfect time to hire now. So they did, and they hired a white male nurse for the job. Yeah.
They could have had a Harvard-educated physician.
Yeah. And sadly, I know, and I change for many, legal reasons in the book when I'm talking about patients or hospitals for the most part. I mean, except the VA, because there's only one VA in Philadelphia. But otherwise, I changed the names. I changed identifying information. Another reason is
look at the reactions. What?
Exactly.
Wow.
Another reason I changed that is because I don't want people to feel like, oh, that one terrible place. And it was terrible. Because sadly, now that I've done this book and I'm part of all these medical groups and social media, this happens all the time, all over the country. I mean, there are deep structural issues with, I told the policing story and everyone in the department agreed, because the problems with this structural bigotry is not just feels like policing, it's medicine as well.
And that's where I was going with the interview you did with Fresh Air. Yeah. That it happened in July, so all the riots, all the racial sensitivity was coming afloat. People being aware of the inequities in all sorts of fields, in policing and all of that. And he asked you, do you see it changing? I know that you had that experience at a hospital. Do you see it changing? And I loved your answer, because you were like, no.
No. I mean, what I see so far is that there's more of a willingness to have the conversation. Or at least there's more of a willingness to not shut the conversation down immediately. But that's all I'm seeing so far. And medicine, I probably said this in that interview, I've said in other ones, it's like turning a cruise ship. I mean, in many ways, it's like, changing procedures in the military or something. It literally doesn't have to be so hard to make the changes. but that's just how deeply entrenched it is. And it's worth it, right? Like the whole reason, not, one of them is the whole reason I'm doing this work is to serve this mission of healing. And for me, that involves social progress, individual and social progress. So for me, that's part of it. I mean, I truly believe there are many times in any kind of conservative institution where a lot of the work to make the change will happen from outside. Inside, yes, but at least half of it, if not more, from outside.
So why not stay at that hospital? Did you feel like he was trying to leave you as the token Black woman doctor? Or did you think, if you don't give me a position in administration, I'm never going to make changes here?
Yeah, that one was, it was impossible to get anything done. I mean, it would be just so micro. It felt very oppressive. And they're not alone. They are not alone, which is sad. So that's one of my self-care strategies, is just to choose my battles and to try and always make the next best decision about where I can be most effective, because it's not acceptable outcome for me to feel like I'm being limited and stopped and I'm not living my fullest life. So I just try and make the best decisions about, okay, where can I work, where I can take care of patients the way that I feel is right, where they can get the best care. And it's interesting and sad that it's a big deal when I say that, because a lot of ER doctors were in the hospital, but a lot of hospital settings and groups, the focus is not patient care, no matter what the commercial says. It's profits. So my heart sings when I'm working with a group where our missions are more aligned in that way, and they kind of leave me alone and I can do my job. And then I can do my other stuff too, like the writing and interviewing and speaking.
Did you just say sleeping?
Speaking. I do.
I worry about how much rest you get, because you wrote this while working at an ER and meditating and going to yoga and running. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Yes. And do you know, it's interesting you brought that up, because last night I slept, and so peacefully, and it was really great to get like a full night's sleep. It was luxurious.
I think you thrive in chaos, woman. I think you thrive in chaos. You must be. Are you really organized?
I try to be very organized. I was very organized. And now, people used to ask, how did you write a book and full time? Well, now I have less full time because of the publicity and the speaking events, and I'm still working full time. So it's, and I am still doing yoga remotely. I log in. So I'm still doing all of that, and I have to clean my condo after this. So
you're a doctor. You need to hire someone to do that for you. Girl, get an assistant. Michele, one thing that always amazes me, coming from the Latino community, is that something, in our case, is someone becomes popular in the Latino community. Someone is discovered, Hamilton happens, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is discovered, J-Lo's discovered, Sofia Vergara is discovered, and suddenly we become hot. And for a month we're hot, and then nothing happens. And so when he asked you that question, I was like, you really think that it was going to be that quick? They're not going to open the door and be like, let me grab all the physicians that are African-American and bring them in right now and kind of equalize the numbers. It happens. It's such a slow process. And do you think that it's because the majority, if we want to put it that way, feels like, okay, but we gave you all this press, so it must be better. Like when Obama was elected.
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance. I'll put it this way. I recently was on an interview, and someone asked a question. It was a very good question. A white woman, and she said, well, you want all this equity, but doesn't that then mean that these other people, like white men, will not have the positions? So some people are going to be losing. So I appreciated her question because, she said the quiet part out loud, right? Like that is, I mean, people with power in general don't want to lose their power. There's the other part where uh, the reason they have power, the reason the number are so unequal is because there's a lot of unearned privileges that they like to call rights. And there are a lot of us who have rights that are now being called privilege. And so, as a result, we're not being hired, promoted, or pay. I mean, talk about pay wage gap, right? Not even paid. For example, women physicians, studies have shown we typically, like to your point about, me speaking to patients, checking up on them, making sure I've covered all my bases. So that bears out generally for women physicians. We tend to work harder and are still paid less for doing more work. I'm a Black female doctor. There's like, I'm 2% of us. That's not represent, like there's something really wrong. So I think it has to do with that. I mean, and it's sad for many reasons, obviously, because whenever people are disenfranchised, that's sad. It's also sad because we suffer as a result. Like, the US has the highest rates between similarly resourced countries, okay? Highest rates of inequality and the worst healthcare outcomes. Like there's a direct correlation.
Right.
And at every income level, like everyone expects, and this is not okay, but everyone expects if you're poor, you're going to have worse health. That's bad. Shouldn't happen. But it plots out for every strata. Rich people in this nation have worse health than rich people in similarly resourced country that are not as financially unequal. So we pay a cost. I mean, I believe emotionally, spiritually, since we're decent people, we know it's wrong. And the data backs it up just objectively as well.
Carolina wants to tell you that as the daughter of an anesthesiologist, she's so happy to hear a doctor with such great sensitivity to know what real self-care is.
It's so important.
And that's what her book is all about. How you during the book, you never forgot about yourself and the journey that you were on. And I really appreciated that because it would have been so easy for you to dismiss that and not to take a lesson to help in your healing from everything you were seeing day to day.
I mean, I truly feel that it's the only way. I mean, I know I'm a doctor, but what resonates with me more is the concept of being a healer. I mean, in anyone, artists are healers.
That's the yoga in you, Michele.
Right.
That's the yoga in you.
Therapists are healers. We're all journalists can be healers, right? And that's what resonates with me more. And so I have to be as committed to my own personal care evolution. I have to, because I'm just jacked up, right? If I am just a hot mess, I will not be effective. It just will not. I will continue, and this happens a lot. I will just pass on my trauma. That is not what I'm here to do. So I have to be cognizant. I have to be willing to constantly be devoted to self-inquiry and I mean self-care as well.
Oh, goodness. See, I love that we had this conversation. Michele, thank you so much because just celebrating Women's History Month, and I know the numbers are depressing, and I know that our conversation was like, wah, wah, happy Women's History Month. But I think it's also important that we have these stories like yours, that your voice is heard, because if you don't see people like you won't think you can achieve anything. And if you don't see people like us also being open about how they feel, their experiences, and we're not cookie cutters. No matter what color, what gender we are, we're not cookie cutter people. We are all the same in a body and so on, like you were saying at the beginning, but we come in all different versions.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we hear all those stories, because I never thought I could learn about self-care and being okay with not being okay and knowing that I will heal from your book.
Right. And I will say that's so important for me because I feel that, sometimes in this wellness world, there are these people who post videos like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy all the time. And if you're just happy and you eat some granola, your life will be fantastic. That's just that's not realistic. And I feel like real joy and grounding comes from being honest about what's happening in the world, in our lives, and moving from that place. And I feel it is possible to be content from that place of honesty.
Absolutely. I did a little switcheroo so that people can see the cover of your book. And they can go get it, The Beauty in Breaking. This is one book that today I honestly regretted reading it on Kindle because as I prepared for the interview, I wanted to, go through the pages and what I highlighted. And I'm like, this doesn't work on a computer. And so, I have my old school notebook with my notes. And so, it's a different world we're living in. But I certainly do not regret reading this book. I think you should too. Dr. Harper, I wish you the best. Keep sharing your voice. Keep speaking the truth. I know this is not comfortable truth when you go back to the hospital and the administrators are like, you said what?
Right. That's okay. Okay. Gotta be done.
But we're here for you, and you have a support system, and people who think that speaking like this and putting yourself out there and sharing the stories of your patients in such a caring way, such a respectful way, is worth it and is so important. So thank you so much, Michele.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Have a great night. So that was Dr. Michele Harper. The name of her book is The Beauty in Breaking. Please go get it. Share it with others. And you know what? It's something really interesting that happened to me with this book. Because I watch all those true crime stories and medical stories and whatever, she has that too. You feel, and she writes so well that you'll get the sense that you're there. But you'll see the empathy and the human touch of the entire team and the idea that they're going to work their hardest to make sure that you're okay. Thank you so much for joining me. Salud. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And don't forget, March 20th, I have my virtual stand-up show. We're going to keep it real. You can get tickets on Belaval.com. One ticket, because it's virtual. You can watch it with whomever you want at home. Buy some takeout to support our restaurants. Have a nice glass of wine or two, and enjoy a night of comedy with me. Remember, AnaBelaval.com, it's Keep It Real, March 20th. You go to Eventbrite, and that link will take you to the ticket, so don't worry, okay? And get it for your parents that know me from Univision. You know who you are. Guys, it's wonderful to spend another Wednesday with you. We will see you next week.